Hello and welcome to this video about Mars Retrograde, the nerdy hero. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller and I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in San Francisco, California.
And we're going to tell you about exactly what Mars Retrograde means for you, how long it will last, important dates happening during it, and best ways you can handle it to stay out of trouble. Well, first of all, what is Mars? Mars is the action hero, the warrior, the pioneer, the athlete. It's the driven, forceful, willful, self-determined side of all of us. Mars likes to act on his own. Mars can devolve into anger and even violence, when pushed to the extreme. Hey, Julia, what is it like when a person is expressing Mars well versus when they're expressing it badly in their own life?
Well, a positive expression of Mars will be somebody who can sort of assert themselves well. Mars, well expressed, can have a lot to do with confidence, with activity level, and even a bit of independence too. Now, Mars, which is poorly expressed, can be a bit dominating. Mars also, which is poorly expressed, sometimes can be a bit it can vacillate from either being a bit too dominating, a little bit too overly assertive, maybe even a bit bullying, or even too cowardly as well.
Yes. I think that Mars can, when it's going badly, can be about like running people over.
Yeah.
I want what I want at all costs, no matter what, and I'm going to have it. I'm going to go after it. And so there might be some of that, those sorts of qualities, the negative side of Mars when Mars goes retrograde. So Mars is going retrograde this year, and I'm going to go into this diagram in a moment. But before I do that, Julia, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it means that Mars is in Gemini. Like, what is a nerdy hero?
Well, Gemini is a very intellectual sign. Nerds tend to be intellectuals. Gemini is also a sign of movement, of also communication too, and even has a little technological aspect to it as well. Nerds can be into technology too. But Mars and Gemini, people who often have Mars and Gemini in their chart, I tend to notice that they're people on the go a lot. Mars is a very active planet. Gemini is a very fast sign. They're people who generally like to go on bike rides, car rides, move around a lot, get a little bit restless if they get too pent up as well. And Mars and Gemini can add some incisiveness to your communication style too.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about how Gemini being an air sign and Mars being a fire planet, Mars would like to be in action, but Gemini prefers to think about it and can be very distractible, can lean into having ADD issues, and that Mars in Gemini could just, sort of be running around like doing a lot of little things, but not actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah,
that could be a little bit frustrating. And it could also be about, having a really great plan to have an exercise regime, but, having so much fun planning it that you're not actually doing anything about it. And then, the element of air, and Gemini is very much air, corresponds to the suit in the tarot of swords. So sometimes I think about swords when I think about air. I think about fencing. I think about sword fighting. I think about, thrusting and parrying with words. Gemini can be very verbal, very clever, very witty, but also sharp with words. Words can be a weapon in the hands of Mars and Gemini. So let's talk about timing. So the cycle of Mars begins and finishes with what I like to call Heroic Epiphany Day. And that's the day when Mars direct conjuncts the Sun at 15 degrees of Libra. And as you can see, that was on October 7, of 2021. And here you can see what it looks like in the actual sky. Mars and the sun coming together in a conjunction here in Libra. Heroic Epiphany Day as the beginning and finish of the cycle, when Mars and the sun conjunct, is like a new beginning and an ending of the previous Mars cycle. The next thing that happens is that quite a bit later, in 2022, in September, Mars goes retrograde. And there it is. That's September 3rd. This is where Mars enters the span that it's going to travel through, 8 degrees. And then as we watch this continue, we're going to see Mars go retrograde the end of October on the 30th. And slowing down, and boom, right there, the little red RX symbol means that Mars has gone retrograde. And then as Mars continues along its path, we will have what's called maximum frustration day. And that is where the sun travels along. Mars is now moving slowly, and the sun comes into an opposition with Mars. And that happens right here at 15 and 16 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini, right here, December 7th and 8th. Maximum frustration day is like when just in the depths of Mercury retrograde, just when you're trying so hard to be the hero and do the right thing, and you're really efforting and facing every obstacle imaginable, right then, like there is this moment where you could be really heroic. This is the moment when, if you push against that obstacle and you push through that maximum frustration, like illumination can happen, clarity can descend, but it just is so hard to do. And it's really, really hard to keep your temper when that's happening too. So watch out for that December 7th, maximum frustration day. The next milestone is where Mars turns direct in 8 degrees of Gemini on January 12th. Of 2022. And watch this little red RX symbol because it'll go away when Mars goes direct. Boom, right there. On January 12th, Mars goes direct, but we're not out of the woods yet. All of that frustration that is built up during Mars retrograde still has to unwind a little bit, and it doesn't really finish until March 15th, when Mars, having attained its regular speed, then also finishes out the span that it has been traveling through by landing in 25 degrees of Gemini and then continuing beyond that. And so the whole cycle takes quite a bit of time. And Julia, what are your thoughts about what people should do to cope during Mars in retrograde, and the sorts of things that they should watch out for?
Well, usually when a planet goes retrograde, it tends to be a time when we have to redo, review, sort of go back over whatever that planet represents. So Mars is our actions. Gemini can be our words. Gemini can also, since it's a highly, it's also a very sort of distractible sign, can be our short attention span too. Gemini can also rule our siblings because of its rulership over the third house. So during this Mars retrograde cycle, I think you need to be prepared to have to take back your words on things, especially if they've been a little bit too sharp. Also, it might be a time where you have to go over your actions again if you disperse them too much, if you were too distractible last time, or if you did sort of, I think one video you mentioned Mars in Gemini is like a chicken with its head cut off running around. Wherever you have Gemini in your chart, you might not be particularly focused and applying your action and your energy in a focused way. So be prepared to have to kind of go back through that. Mars retrograde in Gemini can also be quite restless too.
Yes. And I'm thinking about even things like car accidents, because Mars is like, it sort of represents your car, because Mars is like, it's like an animal in motion. It doesn't have language to communicate with. It doesn't really, so it's not Mercury, it's not Venus, it doesn't really have heart. It's all about being in motion like a car. And then also Gemini corresponds to your local environment, your neighborhood, so while driving locally, watch out for fender benders, watch out for angry other drivers too. And do a little anger management for yourself, and be ready to apologize. This is like the best advice, I think, for the Aries people out there who might really be suffering during Mars retrograde, because Mars is the ruling planet of the Aries folks out there. And so Mars retrograde times can be so frustrating. And being ready to apologize and like back off and slow down is so important, whether you're in Aries or not during Mars retrograde. Well, you can learn a lot more about this particular Mars retrograde and how it lands for you in your horoscope for this month, November of 2022. Julie is going to tell you all about that. You can find out more about other news of the month on our forecast page on our website, pandoraastrology.com. And you can find out about getting a reading or taking a class. And please do be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.